Anthropology, or history of mankind, was always a very complex project, collecting, as the Paris Société des Observateurs de l'Homme declared in spring 1800, in equal parts, information sur l'homme physique, sur l'homme intellectuel et l'homme moral. In mid-19th century, new research organizations in Paris and London turned this multidisciplinary research program into a new, more or less monodisciplinary project, away from the Pritchardian ethnology to a new, in the near future, very successful so-called physical anthropology by James Hunt, or morphometric craniology by Paul Broca and his Paris colleagues. Of course, later on, anthropologists collected linguistic, historical, and ethnographic informations, but as Broca postulated, craniology was the new key between morphology and psychology. And in short time, the epistemic puzzle had completely changed. In the new as in the old tradition, in the science of mankind as in the new morphometric science, schools established rules to group individuals to more or less equal or non-equal units or subunits called varieties, species, nations, or races. These scientific operations had always also an aesthetic and cultural background and also often clear political implications in the Enlightenment as in the colonial 19th century. Two examples from the late 19th century. First, Armand de Quatrefages, one of the leading anthropologists in mid-19th century Paris, postulated, basing on his multidisciplinary catalogue of characteristics, named Anthropologie extérieure, anatomique, physiologique et pathologique on one side, and on the other side, Anthropologie intellectuelle, moraux et religieuse, a scientific explanation for the French-German War. At war in 1971, he published as scientific expert a small book on Prussian race to warn the non-Prussian Germans of the Prussian pan-germanism. La Prusse est ethnologiquement distinct du peuple qu'elle commande. For Quatrefages and other members of the Paris Anthropological Society, the Prussian pan-germanism was une erreur anthropologique, not simply a political program or the strategy of an enemy. And second, 20 years later, Rudolf Virchow mentioned the following three key aspects of contemporary anthropological research in Europe. First, the significance of selection, of course, that's Darwin reception. The man-ape relationship, also clear, and then the past and future of the own nation. From mid-18th century to the American Civil War, the scientific question of the equality of Caucasians and Ethiopians, or the origin of the two groups, are directly related to political questions like abolitionism, slave trade, the legality of colonial slavery, or of the related triangular economic network. As we have seen, this 100 years are also a period of extraordinary epistemic turns in anthropology or history of mankind. From Blumenbach's aesthetic morphological monogenism, Prichard biblical monogenism, to the different morphometric craniological polygenism in the Paris or London Anthropological Society in the 1860s. We can identify a sort of scientific volunteers on both sides of the political front line, supporting the slave defenders like Charles White, Robert Knox, George Morton, Agassiz, and Knott, supporting the opposite side of Abbé Grégoire or William Wilberforce, like Blumenbach, Prichard and Tiedemann, or be passively used, for example, by pamphletists who used results, for example, results published by Sömmering and Meckel to support the overseas slave holders. Therefore, it's not surprising that Johann Friedrich Blumenbach wrote, and the most of you know this text, ich kenne keinen einzelnen körperlichen Charakter, der den Negern eigentümlich wäre, keinen, der den Negern in gleichem Grade gemein wäre und worin sie nicht auch bei manchen anderen noch so entfernten Völkerschaften finden sollte. Keinen, der den Negern in gleichem Grade gemein wäre und worin sie wiederum mit anderen Völkern durch unmerkliche Übergänge gleichsam zusammenfließen sollten, so wie jede andere Menschenvarietät mit ihren benachbarten Völkerschaften zusammenfließt. Blumenbach at another point used attributes leicht gute Geistesanlagen und natürliche Gutherzigkeit with a clear political message. Ich sage sehr bedächtig, im Ganzen genommen nur natürliche Gutherzigkeit, die nämlich nicht auf den Transportschiffen und in den westindischen Zuckerplantagen durch die viehsche Brutalität ihrer weißen Henker so betäubt oder erstickt worden, dass diese weißen Henker so ohne Herz, so auch obendrein ohne Kopf sein müssten, wenn sie bei einer solchen Behandlung noch Treue und Liebe von diesen Sklaven verlangen sollten. Und ended his statement for abolition, überhaupt sollte ich nach allen den angeführten Beispielen von fähigen Negern denken, man könnte wohl ganz ansehnliche Provinzen von Europa nennen, aus deren Mitte man schwerlich vor der Hand so gute Schriftsteller, Dichten, Philosophen und Korrespondenten der Pariser Akademie zu erwarten hätte, so wie man hingegen andererseits kein sogenanntes wildes Volk unter der Sonne bekannt ist, das sich durch solche Beispiele von Perfektabilität und selbst wissenschaftlicher Kulturfähigkeit so ausgezeichnet hätte und sich dazu so zunächst an die gebildetsten Völker der Erde anschlösse als der Neger. 5 years before, in 85, Blumenbach reviewed Sömmering's study on brain size in relation to the cerebral nerves, entitled Über die Verschiedenheit des Mohren vom Europäer. Sömmering analyzed brain size and cranial capacity in relation to the size of the cerebral nerves, the size of the related foraminae and the facial part of the skull. And by the same brain size, African had bigger nerves, bigger foraminae. Therefore, a greater part of the brain was related to this area. And therefore, they had a smaller rest reserved, what we called higher functions. Therefore, he concluded, Negroes are therefore more animal than the European. Blumenbach denied Sömmering's conclusion and suggested, dass der Neger nun nicht bloß ein Mensch, sondern von der gleichen Spezies mit uns sei, wird einleuchtend, sobald man sich erinnert, dass er ebenso gut durch unmerkliche Nuancen der Bildung, Farbe etc. vom Abessiner Hottentotten übergeht, als alle anderen Menschenvarietäten. Against his intention, Sömmering was for a long time used as expert in the political discussion. And the second edition, 1 year later, he wrote, ich legte meine Gründe dar mit möglichster Vorsicht und Behutsamkeit wegen aller nachteiligen Folgen auf die Behandlung dieser Unglücklichen, und doch konnte ich nicht ganz dem Missverständnis entgehen, als ließe sich durch meinen Aufsatz in etwa die Tyrannei entschuldigen, worunter sie in beiden Indien seufzen. In 1936, Bob Richard so kind to speak about Tiedemann. Friedrich Tiedemann took, as he wrote, the liberty of presenting to the Royal Society a paper on a subject which appears to me to be of great importance in the natural history, anatomy, and physiology of man, interesting also in political point of view. He referred indirect to the discussion of the House of Commons, where in '88 the Dolby Act had both houses, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, to limit the cargo by slave shipping. 10 years later, in '99, a second act to limit slave trade to certain parts of Africa. In 1807, the abolition bill went to the end of the transcontinental slave trade, and finally, in 1933, the Emancipation Act. Therefore, the Heidelberg anatomist and physiologist Tiedemann published his comparative study of brain size and cranial capacity of Europeans, African, and Orangs, first in English and first in the Londoner Transactions of the Royal Society. He finished his study with the same conclusions nearly than Blumenbach decades before. The principal result of my research on the brain of the Negroes, that neither anatomy nor physiology can justify our placing them beneath the Europeans in a moral nor intellectual point of view. The slave trade was the proximate and remote reason for the innumerable evil which retarded the civilization of the African tribes. Great Britain has achieved a noble and splendid act of national justice in abolishing the slave trade. The chain which bound Africa to the dust and prevented the success of every effort that has made to raise here is broken. Here, Tiedemann, of course, was too optimistic. In 1936, the chain wasn't broken, not at all. For example, 30 years later, James Hunt, the leader, the president of the London Anthropologists, denied Tiedemann's conclusion because Tiedemann's investigations are not only unsatisfactory, but that his conclusions is not warranted by the fact which we now have at hand. And to Blumenbach and Abbe Gregoire's list of exceptional qualified Africans as proof of race equality opposite, it has been found that these so-called Negroes are the offspring of European and African parents. On the other side, slavery could be used as an argument for the inferiority of the Africans. For example, Johann Christian Fabricius wrote in 1981, wir halten Tausende von ihnen auf allen unseren westindischen Inseln und durch wenige Weiße in der härtesten und drückendsten Knechtschaft. Nie ist es ihnen gelungen, irgendetwas gegen die Weißen auszuführen, denn es fehlt allen ihren Unternehmungen der Geist, der den weißen Menschen in den Stand setzt, große Pläne mit Genauigkeit zu entwerfen und solche mit Nachdruck und Erfolg auszuführen. You know, Blumenbach had enormous influence to James Prichard. Prichard was the foremost proponent of Blumenbach in Britain in the first half of the 19th century. Prichard defended Blumenbach monogenism and his arguments of race equality, and he dedicated to Blumenbach the second and the third edition of his researches, you know it, in 26 and 36. A great number of Prichard's close friends and associated were Quaker or Unitarians, and therefore abolitionists. Some of them founded in 36 the Aboriginal Protection Society, and in 43 later on the Ethnographic Society of London. Once more, we have here a direct relationship between science, research organization, and politics. According to James Hunt, Prichard's work was still in 63, as he wrote, the textbook of the day, a situation Hunt, as militant polygenist, found quite disgraceful. But as textbook of a biblic monogenism, Prichard's work soon lost all current anthropological significance, save later on as a compendium of ethnographic data. James Hunt, as we told, didn't agree either with Blumenbach nor with Prichard, in his speak of the annual meeting of the British Association for the Advancement for Science in Newcastle in September 1963, he declared that many cases of civilized blacks are not poor Negroes, but in nearly every case published by Blumenbach and Grégoire, they had European blood in their veins. And some months later, at the opening of the newly founded Anthropological Society, he insisted that I shall be able to show that the 15 celebrated Negroes, there is no one who is of poor Negro blood. Opposite and to Blumenbach and Prichard, he separated the European from the African in two distinct species, first and foremost for anatomical and physiological reason, in clear opposites to Prichard's ethnological, linguistic, or historical arguments, and because the analogy are far more, as he wrote, numerous between the Negro and the ape than between the European and the ape, and because, as he wrote, the Negro is inferior intellectually to the European. In 1936, James Hunt and Richard Francis Burton founded, in strong opposition to the more or less Pritchardian and later on Darwinian Ethnological Society, who was an offshoot of the Aboriginal Protection Society, the Anthropological Society of London. They modeled the new society after Broca's Société d'Anthropologie de Paris, both dominated clearly by polygenists. After all, it is not surprising that James Hunt supported Southern slavery. At the first meeting of the London anthropologists, he concluded from studies by Franz Pruner Bey, or also Southern pamphlettists like John Van Every, that the Negro is more humanized when he is naturally subordinated to the European than under any other circumstances. That the Negro race can only humanized and civilized by Europeans, and that the highest type of the Negro race is at present to be found in the Confederate States of America, far superior in intelligence and physique to both his brethren in Africa and to his so-called free brethren in the Federal States. Nowhere does the Negro attain to such a long life as in the Confederate States. And this law formally obtained in the West India Island before our mistakes, interferences. Nowhere does the Negro character shine so highly as it does in his childish and fond attachment to his master and his family. As we have seen, James Hunt modeled his Londoner society after Broca's Société d'Anthropologie de Paris. During the US Civil War, Broca's colleagues referred from time to time to the Southern slavery, but in a much more liberal and not so aggressively anti-Darwinian style than James Hunt and the Londoner colleagues. In the Société d'Anthropologie de Paris, both sides, the majority of the polygenists and Quatrefages, as prominent but a little bit isolated monogenists, declared the morphological and intellectual inferiority of the Africans. Louis-Adolphe Bertillon, founding member of the society, declared, for example, que la philanthropie des Yankees est sérieux, mais tout théorétique. And he referred also to American anthropologist and probably slaveholder Joshua Clark Knott. For Bertillon and also Gustave Lannion, the majority of the society est-il constant que le nègre meurt plus vite dans les États du Nord? Nous conclusions que la possibilité d'acclimatement de l'homme de couleur aux Antilles dans les États du Sud est démontrée pour les localités où il se rencontre dans un lieu social favorable, mais qu'il ne résiste pas au travail forcé, à l'état misérable où il se trouve ailleurs. Georges Boucher, like others, croit à l'inégalité des races humaines, mais à la permanence de cette inégalité. Armand de Quatrefages, first professor in anthropology at the Musée national d'histoire naturelle de Paris, had also a clear position. For him, the African is inferior to the white, but must have the same rights. As monogenist, he described a way out of the painful struggle for emancipation, selection and hybridization. Il y a deux moyens de perfection une race d'animaux. La sélection qui conduise à choisir les sujets destinés à les reproduire et le croisement avec une race supérieure. La sélection impossible dans le genre humain, c'est clair. Les croisements, au contraire, s'effectuaient partout et il y a à Saint-Dominique, à l'époque de la première révolution, un grand nombre de mulâtres dont l'intelligence égalait celle des Blancs. And he also referred to the old list of the extraordinary Africans as proof for monogenism. Dans la race nègre, il y a quelques individus isolés dont l'intelligence s'élève au niveau de celle des Blancs. C'est la preuve d'unité d'espèce, car on n'a jamais vu une espèce produire, même isolement, un individu d'une autre espèce. In pre-war time, the conflict between the northern and the southern state was also a dirty fight, you know, between pamphlet,ists. The prominent antebellum pro-slavery advocate Joe Campbell, he refused, of course, the Blumenbach Prichard-Tiedemann alliance simply because it leads to no result. And John van Every, physician, a sort of one of the early professional racists and editor in New York, overruled pro-African argument by one simple argument, the matter of common sense. The American or the Southern know that the Negro is a Negro and is not a Caucasian, as he knows that black is black and not white, and that a man is a man and not a woman. He sees Negro parents have Negro offspring, that Indian have Indian offsprings, and that whites have white offsprings, each after its kind, with the same regularity, uniformity, and perfect certainty that it witnessed in all other forms of existence. Louisa Susanna Jeeves McCord, one of the prominent supporters of the conservative Southerners, opposite Prichard and Blumenbach as outstanding, because they closed their labors at a period when light was breaking in upon the science of ethnology. And in April 51, McCord wrote for the slavery supporting Southern Quarterly Review, we know that there are also strong defenders of the unity of descent, and the name of Prichard is unknown to no one who has doubt even light upon this subject. But it cannot be denied that the most recent investigations and authorities are opposite to it. We have in the United States two names too well to need comment, Agassi and Morton. Now, a first conclusion. I postulated a strong relationship between the science of man, as history of mankind, ethnology, or physical anthropology, and contemporary culture and politics. And so we can see this relationship of two areas, the European and the worldwide international level. First, the national level. In the second half of the 19th century, scientists found different correlation between national biology and national history. Paul Broca, Rudolf Ludwig Rütimeyer, and many others tried to reconstruct national prehistoric or historic immigrations by craniology, for example. They use Broca body size or cranial proportion as a sort of fingerprints in modern forensic anthropology. We can use fingerprint because they are individual and they are not changeable, they are stable during lifetime. Also, morphometric or cranial fingerprints must be the same thing. Therefore, every race has typical fingerprints. That's the individual part. In modern population, we can find all these fingerprints because all these morphological or psychological characteristics are postulated as unchangeable, stable over a long period since the diluvial period when selection was stopped. For example, after Coleman has this propagated. Therefore, Robert Knox described the Irish question as a conflict between two races, of course also after Gobineau. Therefore, Quatrefages described the Prussian pan-Germanism as anthropological mistake, as erreur anthropologique. And second, on a more traditional worldwide level, we have a strong correlation between slavery or abolitism and the anthropological description as in the late Enlightenment, also in the colonial 19th century. Under the influence of transformism, the unchangeable system of human variation lost stability. Therefore, the differences between monogenists and polygenists become a little bit disappeared. Within some limitation, the so-called primitive varieties could progressively be civilized. Like children, Africans would be civilized step by step with the help of their white tutors and masters. Even in 1840, Charles Lyell described slaves from Southern California as talkative and chatty as children. James Hunt later on as childish. And Quatrefages, il y a longtemps que je considère le nègre adulte comme un être dont l'intelligence est restée par une sorte d'arrêt du développement au point où nous l'observons chez les adultes, chez les races blancs. Le blanc n'a pas le droit de commander le nègre, mais il a le devoir de le protéger comme un père protège des enfants. And Jean-André Napoléon Perrier, médecin en chef de l'Hôtel impérial des Invalides à Paris, advocated before the Paris Anthropological Society in 1961 for European responsibility to civilize the Africans. Il declared, premier de tout, serviteur de tout. Voilà, il faut entendre l'inégalité. And finally, since that time, this indestructible topos of the African as a black child has also become a long tradition, even in popular culture. Even after World War II, we can find this topic of African as innocent black child, for example, in sweetie Hollywood pictures on white missionary doctors fighting for black children in dark Africa. In this short time, I could give you just an idea of the complex network of natural history, cameral history, culture and civilization, politic vision and religion, economic and military power in the field of anthropological research. And this high complexity makes the history of this field so exciting. Thank you very much.